Hey folks, it's Amy from Colorado Mountain Living. Wanted to give you an update on our weekend. More work on the outside of the house. We're trying to get that wrapped up because the cold weather is definitely coming. We keep getting breaks of it. Like today, it's about 46 degrees outside, so it's pretty mild for this time of year. We're getting 55 degrees tomorrow, so this past weekend actually was a prime weekend to get our stucco done because it didn't really go below freezing. In fact, we came into some other problems of a different sort, and I'll tell you about that in the video. Had a bit of a issue with our stucco, but overall, I wanted to show you how it turned out and kind of prep you a little bit on what we're going to be getting into next, since we're going to be wrapping up, I think, a lot of our outside work. We're trying to really focus on more of the indoor stuff now that it's getting a little bit too extreme to work outside. In fact, I think Bryan had the extreme of all extremes this weekend, finishing some of the stucco. I'll tell you about it. Hard at work. So you're digging down a few inches.
It would be at least 6 inches.
6 inches below the siding there.
Yeah. No, I'll put a 6-inch strip of the mesh, the lathe on there.
Yeah.
And then stucco.
Stucco, then stucco. Stucco, the order of the day. Stucco.
I'll get a bunch of tarps and just cover it up for the night.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one I'll have to maybe drape it over,
Mm-hmm.
put a heater in there.
Yeah, could do that. Should be a pretty mild weekend. I think the overnight lows are in the mid-30s, so,
Yeah.
but
The gas guys on the highway have the big tents over there, cement, with heaters on them.
yeah. Well,
Like
remember,
sun bright lights.
didn't we did our foundation in February last winter?
Yeah, we had
2 winters ago.
insulation tarps on them.
Mm-hmm. After the metal was put up, the next step was mixing up all of the cement stucco. And luckily it wasn't too windy on Saturday, so it wasn't blowing all around all over the place. But Bryan's adding sand and to the mix and trying to get the consistency just right to lay it on the mesh, because it's got to stay vertical on the corners especially. So, it wasn't too cold either. Luckily, it was in the 40s with the sun, so it made the job pretty decent, and hopefully not really expecting much problems with the drying of the stucco. As you can see, he's putting it on. It's a little tricky getting around the corners, though. That's where he was noticing the biggest trouble was having it stick on the corners and not come flying off in chunks and stuff. So working up one corner and then making his way down around the bottom of the doorway there to the other corner. Looks like that kinetic sand stuff that you used to see at the craft stores. One thing we were noticing and commenting on was the consistency of the stucco. It was just really sandy, really dry, not really concrete-like at all. And yeah, it was just kind of interesting to work with, because it was kind of like crumbly and not really, it was just more dry, really, really sandy. But the reason for that, turns out, before Bryan mixed up, I think as he was mixing up his second batch, there, he was noticing when he was opening up the bag that he actually bought the wrong stuff. He thought he was buying Portland cement mix with lime, and he got a bag of sand and everything. But turns out that what he ended up getting was masonry mix, and that already has sand pre-mixed into it. So you can see in the bag here, these aren't the ingredients to make stucco. And you can see by the consistency, get really close in there, it's just really dry, really, really sandy. It doesn't really look very concrete-y, almost kind of brownish looking, not really black. But so turns out that Bryan had to wash it all off with a hose, and then head back to the store and get the right stuff, Portland cement, lime, and sand, and redo the job the next day. Fortunately, the next day, the weather wasn't quite so cooperative. It happened to be one of those really windy, chilly days. Looking at the thermometer, started off pretty windy, average wind speed 11, peaking at 27, and then it didn't let up. Later in the afternoon, it got windier, averaging 22 miles an hour with almost a 30-mile-an-hour gusts. Not a great day to redo this job. So Bryan's mixing up his mix again. At least all of the mesh is done, so he doesn't have to go back and do that. At least he got to save that bit of work. But we got the mix from the store last night, the Portland cement and sand and a little bit of lime. So he's mixing it up right now, and that's over there by the grill. And as everything's getting mixed up in the concrete mixer, you can tell already that the consistency is just night and day. It's much less sandy, much more concrete-like this time. You can see there is a bit of a color difference. It's definitely darker, a more charcoal gray. But Bryan says it still is difficult to apply, mostly because it's so windy. And he was definitely having trouble getting it stuck on the corners. He said pieces and chunks were falling off because the wind was just blowing it, sometimes right off the trowel. But it was definitely a harder job to do on the second day because of the factor of the wind. But luckily, one thing that you find when you do a job the second time around, it goes a little bit quicker. You already have your system down. He's got this board here. You can plop some of the mud on and then also kneel on it and just kind of make his way across the bottom here. He was talking about as he's scraping the trowel into the wheelbarrow, how he created a hole in his glove and actually made a hole in his knuckle. Pretty rough there, rough work. So all in all, it took about a good half-day job to do it again. That's without having to add the mesh on, but just reapplying the mud, reapplying the stucco took about a half day. And, so as far as time loss, yeah, we definitely lost a day's worth of work because after that, Bryan was ready to go take a nap. So he ended up, this is the part he didn't get to the day before, was around the little shed there. But he's just using up the very last of this mud and patching up some cracks that he's seen, some rough patches. So definitely not the type of day that where you want to do the job a second time when it's so windy and cold. I think the wind chill was in the 20s. Definitely a burr kind of day, and hard to hold onto the trowel when your hands are freezing and finishing up that work. But the thing is that it never really got below freezing. So we actually had a few days warm up, including the beginning of the week. So it's going to help us with the curing and the drying. And I'll show you guys how that turned out. Guess that'll do.
It'll do. It's stone on it, so
Who cares? Who cares what it looks like? Just got to stick the stone on it. Well, I guess we'll wait till the spring to do that. Yeah.
unless you want to.
No, I don't feel like doing it. A little chilly. This will be all right for the winter. At least it'll be warm tomorrow, So, poor guy, poor Bryan. I know we've all made mistakes. In fact, I'd love to hear your biggest mistake where you've had to redo something. I was trying to make Bryan feel better, and it's like sometimes you have to redo the job, and it's just what it is, But I'm sure there's been occasions where you've had to redo something that was more than just a half day's worth of work, and it wasn't in 30-mile-an-hour winds. I don't know. I'm not sure how much worse it could have been for Bryan to redo that job, but fortunately, we're in good shape now with the stucco. It's very firm. There's no cracking. It looks good because it's all going to get covered up anyway by stone. I mean, ultimately, this is just, for now, it's all sealed up for the winter time, and we're going to get to that stone work when our next mild weather comes along, which probably won't be for a while. But who knows? You never know with the winter time when you could have a break in the weather. But after this Wednesday, it looks like it's going to get cold and snowy again. So at least we got the window where we could get this important section done, so we have the drying time, because we've got another 2 more nice days of mild weather before we get down to below freezing temperatures. So anyway, guys, that is the update on the house. And I know we're going to be shifting more towards some of the indoor work. We got to finish up this little mini shed right next to me here. We've got we've got a couple of pieces of steel siding left, and we can probably put that up on this little mini shed and do the roof as well. And then we'll probably be really wrapped up for outdoor work on the house and shifting more towards what I can't wait for is the master bathroom. So our next projects are going to be working on the vanity area and then into the steam shower. That's another big project that's going to come probably a little bit later this winter, but we have all the supplies for it. It's just all that labor. But it probably won't be as bad. That's a job that you can work on when you're inside and cozy and not outside in the blaring winds and elements, and we can enjoy being in a nice toasty house. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. And anyway, send Bryan some encouragement. I know it's always tough admitting your mistakes, and I know we all make them, and nobody's perfect, but it's one of those things where got to show people that you're real and that we're not perfect anyway. So if you've got a story to share about your worst experience having to do a job twice, let us know in the comments, because I'm sure that would boost Bryan and make him feel better about screwing up his masonry work. But at least it's done now, and we get to enjoy working on the inside projects. See you guys. Bye-bye.